Yeah. We back. Get your pencils and your papers. Like they say on picture pages. Time to get your picture pages. Time to get your papers and your pencils. Like and share, man. Like and share. We're getting ready to illuminate some history. All you got to do is put your notifications on. Put your notifications on. I'm going to teach this history, like and share. Come on, y'all. We're going to jump into this science. I'll give it a minute. Also, subscribe to our Temple and School page on Instagram, burningbushtabernacle.ts. So I'll give it a minute.
Can we get the...
You're what? So we give everybody a little grace period. I like to do that before I get started. Whoa. Got wind blowing cold out. Got it? So we 2 minutes in. I'll give it a couple minutes. Yep. Peace. I'll give it a second to see if anybody log on. I just like to jump on here, man. Talk to the people. I said I'm always come back and talk to the people as I'm educating the world. That's part of my obligation. So I hope we all here to learn. I hope we all here with an open mind. And I challenge you to study and research. And look into everything and research what I'm speaking on and the topics I'm speaking on. And always have an open mind. Because most history was given to you by the ones that stepped on your neck. And so I'm going to highlight J.A. Rogers' book, The 5 Negro Presidents. I have 2 films that I'm trying to pick which one I'm going to play. I don't know which one. So depending on the spirit, how it leads me, as I highlight J.A. Rogers' book. And once I'm close, that'll determine what film I'm gonna play if I have time. If I don't only want to come from writer's perspective that we know or may not know, I also want to come from the pen of the misnomer European or the Albion or the white or the Trilodite, whatever you want to call it, man. Their perspectives and the scholars during that time to have an open mind what was going on across the globe. So we're going to highlight a little bit of J.A. Rogers' book. I might highlight it all because it's only a pamphlet. It's only about like maybe 17 pages. Everybody should have just, you know what I mean? A lot of Moors don't study and don't read things. They just buy things and put it on the shelf. So I'm going to highlight some of this science. And I want us to have an open mind. I don't want us to be prejudiced like the most of the world. I showed you about the Wilmington white man's constitution and show you how they didn't want to be ran and governed by Negroes. I show you what you can do in law. So we're going to highlight something. And like I said, I have 2 films, but depending on how the spirit leads me in the time on what film I play. So the 5 Negro presidents, according to what white people said they were, by J.A. Rogers. Undercover, President Harding and his paternal granduncle, Oliver Harding, Abbott's Monthly, September 1932, Wesleyan University Press, Middleton, Connecticut. A lot of people back then, like J.A. Rogers and Carter G. Woodson, they were so high you thought they were a different nationality, like Du Bois and all them, the bougie. I let the pendulum swing both ways. But in 1963, when Attorney General Kennedy and Senator Javits said there might be a Negro president in the next 30 or 40 years, fact, most outspoken of the big magazines replied there was already one. And in its February 1964 issue had an entire article, America's First Negro President. It named Warren G. Harding and the one, and had affidavits from elderly whites who knew the Harding family. But before Harding, 3 other presidents had been loudly proclaimed by white people as being of Negro ancestry: Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, and Abraham Lincoln. The portraits of none of the above mentioned show the slightest degree of Negro strain, but that is certainly not proof. Even before the Revolution, many of Negro ancestry had become so white that the whites who had been kidnapped and sold as Negroes could not prove they were really white. The more so that some of them were darker than the bleached Negroes. Children were especial victims. As late as 1858, white orphan asylums sold their children at public auctions, and a picture of the time show a white child been tanned to sell him into slavery in the South. Harper's Weekly, January 30th, 1864, has pictures of emancipated white slaves. The most famous case of the time was that of Salmon Muller, Salomon Muller. Does it Muller sound ring bells? I'll cross-reference some of that and later and show you. A white German girl who was sold as a Negro slave. Her relative brought suit, but the Supreme Court of Louisiana held she was a Negro. Because anytime you got a tittle of that blood in you, you were classified as a Negro. See, these is facts. When I show you the real cause and the hidden cause of the Civil War, which they try to have so much, I got all these books that they try to make expensive. I read everything. I must as a scholar. I don't have no side. I have the true side. It wasn't until her birth certificate was dug up in Germany that her real race was discovered. In fact, Salmon, who had been married to a Negro, believed herself to be one also. What writers of the time said of this is given in My Sex and Race, Volume 2, in the chapter, White People Sold as Negro Slaves. Even some aristocrats were of Negro ancestry. George Washington tells of Colonial Catesby, C-O-C-K-E, Virginia senator, whose Negroid features made him hurry away nervously from Washington's home when he saw there was an old Negro to whom he bore a striking resemblance. Therefore, when the political opponents of a presidential candidate said he was a Negro, many accepted it without question. It is usual for white writers to condemn offhand the statement that any president could possibly have any could have any degree of Negro strain whatsoever, but it's not possible without minute tracing of ancestry to find whether one is pure white. Here's the case of one who started as a Negro, became white, and then voluntarily became a Negro again. He is T. John McKee. T. John McKee. I hope y'all have y'all pens. Whose case attracted national attention and whose picture appeared on the front page of the New York Daily News, February 20th, 1948. McKee, grandson of a Negro millionaire of that name, had crossed the color line, gone to Yale, and studied law. He lived for 45 years as a white man and has been a successful Wall Street lawyer, said the news. He had also married a white woman and had children by her. Then in 1948, he saw an issue by an orphan society of Philadelphia for any living grandson of McKee. The latter, in his will, had left $800,000 to found a military school for white and Negro orphans, with the provisions that if this was not done, the money with interest should go to his last living grandson. The attorney McKee discovered was no other than himself, and he promptly became a Negro again, to tune of $1.2 million, with interest on the original sum. Here's another case, this time from England. Royalty. David Michael, Marquis of Milford Haven, cousin of the Queen of England, has some Negro strain, but positively does not show it. On the paternal side, he is descended from Queen Victoria. On the maternal, from Pushkin. Y'all know who Pushkin is, Russia's greatest poet. Pushkin, in turn, is descended from Abram Petrovich Hannibal, an unmixed Sudanese Negro who had been adopted by Peter the Great of Russia, and of whom Pushkin wrote in his Negro of Peter the Great. Hannibal's descendants married also into the German, Russian, Dutch, and other royal families. Man, I'll show y'all the history of these people, man, that was so-called black slave mixing with Europeans back then, and I'll show you the name of the type of people, and I'll show you this. All in history. I just don't want to misquote the name. In some southern states, this member of England royalty would be a Negro. Virginia law provides that if any Negro ancestry is ascertainable, one is a Negro. When I say any little drop of blood in you, which means you a Negro, the cause of the Civil War, the real cause of the Civil War. If you got a little drop of Negro blood in you, you a Negro. If this has been proven of Thomas Jefferson, also, he will be one. These is facts. When the descendant of Victoria and of Pushkin married, the Hearst newspaper had a feature on it saying that a cold black baby might yet be born in the English royal family. This was based on the belief that if either couple has the slightest degree of Negro strain, a cold black child might be born. Debrits Peerage, page 53. Burke's Peerage, page 1668. I'm giving you reference. Therefore, if Negro strains can be found in European royalty, which is so exclusive, why not in the American colonies, where there was so much intermixing, or I like to use the word grafting? Winston Churchill's grandmother was 1/4 American Indian, which William Joyce, rightly or wrongly, claims wasn't Indian, but Negro. That therefore these American presidents might have had some Negro strain is possible. Did some persons who knew the intimate details of their ancestries tell of them? And there are very many instances of whites being exposed as Negroes. Interracially, intercourse was very common then. George Washington had a Negro son and Jefferson mulatto daughters. Negro males were also named as co-respondents in white divorce cases, as Helen Catherall, Helen Catterell, tells in her judicial case concerning American slavery and the Negro. Mixed marriages was also legal in several southern states, including Virginia and Mississippi. In Tennessee, mixed couples had to pay a tax. Thomas Jefferson, the chief attack on Jefferson was in the Johnny Cake Papers. In the general denunciation of him is said, and I quote, Thomas Jefferson, son of a half-breed Indian, squaw or squaw, S-Q-U-A-W, served by a Virginia mulatto father. It also called him a half-nigger. Opposition papers took it up. It's difficult to find matters which specific details of the assertion now. You can look up Albert J. Knox, Jefferson's, page 233 in 1928, Taylor and Middleton's The Eagle Streams, page 67 and 77, written in 1936, David C. Coyle's Ordeal of the Presidency, pages 29, 1960, and David S. Border, New York Times Magazine, September 9th, 1964. Andrew Jackson, father and mother came from Ireland and were wretchedly poor. The Virginia Magazine of History, volume 29, page 191, says that Jackson was the son of a white woman who had intermarried with a Negro and that his eldest brother had been sold as a slave in Carolina. What gave an air of truth to this was the elder Jackson died before Andrew was born. His widow went to live on the Crawford farm where there were Negro slaves, and that one of these was Andrew's father. It was stressed that Andrew was conceived after the death of his supposed father, whose name he bore. Other mention can be found in David C. Doyle's Ordeal of Presidency, page 127, 1960. Jacobson, The Affairs of Dame Rumor, page 190, 1943. Abraham Lincoln in a cartoon of 1860. The original source is not known, and it appears in Davis Broder's Ordeal of the Presidency, and you can note the woolly hair. Lincoln was said to be the illegitimate son of a Negro by Nancy Hanks. And it's, man, and just like, man, you know what, man, when you start doing real research like Shakespeare, you will really start seeing, and people, even our own people, they be mad, oh, Shakespeare did all this. Man, no disrespect. In history, when you start really seeing things, because Europeans had no writing language or nothing, you will see who really, really wrote for them. You will see who really, really took credit for things that people was doing. They were illiterate. They couldn't even navigate. In his campaign for the presidency, he was often referred to as a Negro by his opponents. He was even depicted as a Negro. He was called Abraham Africanus I. What gave strength to this was that his hair was more Negroid than Caucasian. So was his color. Of his father, he said, his face was round, his complexion swarthy. Just like when I talk about brunette, in ancient time, brunette is dark. Ask anybody. Swarthy Pyatt, Black Pete in the Netherlands, hair black and coarse, eyes brown. Of himself, of dark complexion, with coarse black hair and dark eyes. Everybody that's copper color don't have big noses and the big lips and all that goofy stuff. Herdon, his closest friend and law partner, said he had very dark skin. Look up Herdon. He was a law partner. His confidential servant, William Slade, an ex-slave and a Negro, was much fairer and had straight hair. Slade looked like a white man. Herdon said there was something about his Lincoln origins he never cared to dwell on. Other writers agree with him. Coleman says all we know about President Lincoln's parentage and birth under his own hand are two brief records. One, an entry in the Bible in his own handwriting that he was born February 12, 1809, and the other, a brief autobiography, which he gave Mr. Jesse Arfel in December 1859 for a campaign sketch. Lincoln had a secret preying on his mind. Was it his race? You know, you can research this on pages of The Hidden Lincoln, page 412, written in 1938. Jacobson mentions a catechism by a Western author adducing evidence that Lincoln was of Negro ancestry. He also mentions another catechism by Chauncey Burr, who said it would not rebound to Lincoln's honor to have it proven that he is a Negro. Lincoln's honor to have it proven that he is part Negro. For then, on the ground of a natural sympathy with his own race, we might find excuses for facts which we could never pardon a white man. All these references, Coleman, The Evidence That Abraham Lincoln Was Not Born in Lawful Wedlock, 1899. Beveridge, A.J. Abraham Lincoln, Volume 1, page 4, 1928. Lincoln Encyclopedia, page 190, 1950. C. Jacobson, The Affairs of Dame Rumor, page 191, 1948. D.C. Doyle's Ordeal of Presidency, page 155, 1960. Sandberg, Carl Sandburg, The Prairie Years, Volume 2, page 381, 1926. American Mercury, June 1925. The Mini-Sire Lincoln. Man, I can go on and on with references. Vice President Hamlin. Even more than Lincoln was his vice president, Hannibal Hamlin. I got a book about that. They try to hide in history. They try to say that book is thousands of dollars. I've been had them. They try to say that's one of the rarest books. No, it ain't. They try to make it run the rarest. I had that in my library. Been had it for years. While a United States Senator from Maine, he was often attacked from the floor because of his dark skin. To the opponent, he replied, "I take my color from nature. You get yours from the brandy bottle, which is more honorable." He was a special target for the South during the 1860 campaign, the more so as he was more outspoken against slavery than Lincoln. Editorials thundered against him and the dire effects of electing a free Negro to the vice presidency. R.B. Rhett, R-H-E-T-T, succession leader of the Charleston, South Carolina, Mercury, June 9th, 1860, said Hamlin is what we call a mulatto. He has black blood in him. The Northern people elected the man in consequence of his peculiarity. They designed to place over the South a man who has Negro blood. He wrote Lincoln that he understood that Lincoln had a mulatto boy, and if you will let us know what you would take of the boy, Hannibal, and your price is reasonable, we'll purchase him. The Chicago Democrat, June 4th, 1861, said, the constant theme in the South for the last 2 months has been election of the abolitionist Lincoln and the free Negro Hamlin. As regards Hamlin color, General Butler wrote the Secretary of War, Stanton, when he was gathering Negro troops for the Union Army, that he would have a regiment of mulattoes about the complexion of Vice President Hamlin. While the South was making much against Lincoln and Hamlin, one of South's generals, James B. Floyd, was being called a Negro in the North. Floyd had been governor of Virginia, a candidate for presidency of the United States, and a formerly Secretary of War. A United States publication, Rebellion Record, Volume 3, page 47, 1862, has the following story about Floyd from the Springfield Republican. A few years ago, a gentleman residing in Richmond, Virginia, gave a large dinner to some distinguished men, among whom Floyd, then a rising man, but whose personal appearance indicated neither mental or physical superiority, he being a bursy, dark-complexioned man with crisp hair. Among the guests were 2 Indian chiefs, magnificent specimens of their race. Floyd, thinking to compliment them and make them at their ease, told them in a condescending manner that he could boast of Indian blood, being descended from Pocahontas. One of the chiefs, drawing himself up majestically and disdainfully, and with a look of contempt on his noble countenance, said in broken English, no, nigger. The confusion and dismay of Floyd was complete, and it required all that boasted politeness of Richmond to keep the other guests from laughing aloud. Mention of a Negro strain in Lincoln was revived most unexpectedly in 1940, when RKO, for the world premiere of the motion picture Abe Lincoln in Illinois, offered a prize for the American who most resembled Lincoln. The winner was Thomas Bomar, a lawyer and president of the National Postal Alliance. When after submitting his picture, he appeared in person, the judges were amazed. It was as if Lincoln had come to life. But before the premiere, it was discovered that Bomar, who to all appears as white, was a Negro. He was given the prize and sat in front row the opening night. But nothing was said of the contest. The dailies were silent about the affair, but Interstate Broadcasting Company of New York mentioned in January 27th, while the Negro press gave it widely publicity. Friday, An outspoken white magazine also gave it several pages with pictures under the headings Lincoln Snub at Lincoln Movie Show. It tells how the prize was privately awarded to a Negro, the man who looked most like Lincoln, March 15th, 1940. Also in J.A. Rogers, Sex and Race, Volume 2, page 379. You will see Bomar's picture. Everybody should be telling about this because I know they don't be reading, they don't be studying. They try to have a perspective. I'll just give it to you. Attorney General Harry Daugherty says that there was discovered in the San Francisco mails along over 250,000 copies, and that President Wilson indignantly ordered the stuff destroyed. Thereafter, they were distributed by hand. With this also appeared a book by William Estabrook, Chancellor, Professor of Economics, Politics, and Social Sciences of Worcester College, Ohio. Chancellor based his assertion on interviews with aged residents of Marion, Ohio, who knew the Harding family. He had affidavits from them, as well as a letter from Senator Foraker, a friend of the Negro, who had written him asking him to give Harding's sister, Miss Votaw, employment in the public schools of Washington, D.C., of which Chancellor was then superintendent. She was given employment in a Negro school, then tightly segregated. She also lived amongst the Negro people. Wendell P. Dabney, a Negro editor of a weekly and paymaster of the city of Cincinnati, said that Harding had been known as a Negro long before the seculars appeared, and that when he was first running for office, he used to tell Negroes he was colored. It is reported that when Republican leaders had called on Harding to deny the story, he said, "How should I know? One of my ancestors might have jumped the fence." The Justice Department did its best to suppress the story, and one of the special investigation, Gaston B. Means, M-E-A-N-S, tells how he bought up Chancellor's book on Harding, brought them to Washington in a Garden Express car, and made a big bonfire of them on the grounds of the Boyd Mansion. The plates were also destroyed, he said. That's in the book Strange Death of President Harding, pages 139 and 140. So thorough was the suppression that the book, what I just showed y'all that I have in my library, Warren G. Harding, President of the United States, is one of the rarest books ever printed in America. There are only 3 known copies, but we have copies. Back then, there was only 3 copies. They did a lot of reprints, but I have the originals. And then it was worth $200,000, and some people still pay a lot for them, especially the college students that are trained in American history and teaching American history, not trained, but teaching American history and Illuminate. They get all the books from me because they know the value, and they get them PDF. January to February 1964, reproduces and reproduction copies of some of the sworn affidavits of aged whites who knew Harding's ancestors. It also says that inquiries made by Dr. H.F. Alderfer and Samuel Hopkins Adams among the persons who swore to the affidavits showed that such persons still held to what they had said about Harding's being a Negro. The 5th president said to be a Negro ancestry will not be named. This in the science. There seems to be no published research on his ancestry, as in the case of Harding. My first intimation or assertion of it was from a white woman in a caf in Latin Quarter of Paris, where Americans met. This is where J.A. Rogers was at, nightly to talk. I understood it had appeared in a French paper on the topic of race intermixture. On my return to America, I heard much of it in Washington and in New York, and was asked by my audience if it was true. But the only published mention I ever saw of it was in Baltimore Afro-American, where one of its Negro columnists said it was a smear. So Morris, so far as I know, it was based on a photograph of the president's mother and on certain of those of the president's. The portrait of his mother, to those acquainted with the Negroid demeanor or the Negroid features, does show Negro ancestry. Almost everyone who sees it has, without prompting or knowing who she is, says she is colored. All were amazed when they heard who she really is. She is Virginia born. And the features of this president also do show some Negroid strain in the more informal pictures, especially too in the possession that we have. Some of his pictures bear a striking resemblance to well-known Negroes. As for color, photographers and pictures often are quite different from the real color of the subsequents. Moors. Right now while I'm teaching, what does Maccabees chapter 3 and 43 states? Come on. And then I start showing you in pictures Russian icona by Vladimir Ivanov, how the European trying to whitewash themselves in the history books. In conclusion, the fact that these 5 presidents could be Caucasian to some and Negro to others, but shows how ridiculous this is burning the question of race, Moors. Alexander Hamilton, drawn life by Peale, New York Public Library collection. Hamilton was darker in color than the picture shows, but you got to know his woolish hair. They always try to make the pictures white and light for you to think that's how they look. That's just a black and white picture. But I got a lot of the originals in color, man. Look at the hair. I mean, the hair is woolly. And then I'm going to show you the whitewash picture. Alex Hamilton, another American whose ancestry has been in dispute. The Native Virginia Islanders have insisted that he was colored. White American authors deny it. Caucasian Eyes, the New York Public Library collection. So here I showed you in the New York Library collection, drawn from life by Peale, drawn from life by Peale. And then I'm gonna show you in the same New York Library, collection, the Caucasian one made up. So who's lying to you? And then I'll show you how the Smithsonian Museum lied to you about what they found in the Grand Canyons. Man, I told you, I'm a graduate alumni from GCU. I'll show you all the artifacts that they found in the Grand Canyon that they got the military police watching. And look at the fake one. The same people, the same places you see where these pictures at, they got the fake, and that's what they promote. I'm telling you, man. And I ain't even got deep yet. We just in the introduction. When I play the films, I got 2 films to play. I'm gonna play one. Among Virginia Islanders who say he was Hubert Harrison, George Chancellor, and Reverend Charles D. Martin. The letter says that his mother, Rachel Fawcett, was a mixed blood, that white women, as in the other West Indian colonies, were very rare, Nevis being especially so, that the first mothers of the colony were Negro slave women with the mulatto offsprings of their white masters. As in the United States, the white masters had children with the mulatto women, and that their offsprings came to be listed as white. This is, they were known as white by law. I show y'all that document when I show y'all white by law. And then I show y'all, man, y'all, we be misclassed and then y'all and have no idea what I teach real history. As in certain southern states of America, John Fawcett, grandfather of Rachel, was listed in the early census as having 4 black females. The surest proof that Hamilton was of Negro ancestry, says Reverend Martin, is that Hamilton's brother, James, same mother, same father, also migrated to the United States, where he was treated as a Negro because of his dark color and hair. James, who was a merchant, was once refused a seat in a Broadway coach because of his dark complexion and is suing the company for heavy damages. Quotes Reverend Martin from a letter to the Times. And in that article, Alexander Hamilton had Negro blood. He says the proof of this is not on the general belief that West Indians are mixed blood, but in the statement of eyewitnesses who knew the boy before fame, crowned the man. Reverend Martin adds that Hamilton's father was invited to the United States, but not his mother because her presence would have ruined his prospects. She loved her son, Alexander, too much, and the father, the failure, would have been accepted, but the mother, with the noble mind and the dark skin, would create as much trouble as a colored delegate at a white convention. Her features were too pronounced. She was too typically Negro. The Beth Tafflin, August 1916. Beth, T-P-H-I-L-L-A-H, in August 1916. The spokesman, January 1925, insists that he was of Negro extraction, has never been successfully disputed. The statesman had Negro blood, his mother being a Negro woman. Maurice Davey, professor of sociology at Yale University, says, among notable Americans, the story persists that Alexander Hamilton, who was born on the island of Nevis, was of Negro descent. Complete proof or disproof of his allegation is difficult since he was born out of wedlock. If Hamilton was not a Negro, he certainly brought two Negro sons into the world. One married a very light-colored white female and lived as white. Research Negroes in America Society, page 391 in 1949. Strongest in support of Hamilton as white was Gertrude Atherton, leading novelist. She had written two novels glorifying him, The Hero and The Conqueror, both of which she claimed were his true and romantic story. Because of the insistent claim that he was a Negro, she decided to go to Nevis to prove that both his parents were unmixed whites. She said in the North American Review, volume 175, page 227 and 242 in 1902, I had admired Booker T. Washington, and I wish the colored race all the success that is deserved, but inherited instincts are strongest in us, and both enthusiasm and imagination will shrivel were I obliged to accept as a fact that Hamilton had Negro blood in him. If Hamilton had colored blood, he would have had several coal black descendants before this, such being the freakish law of nature. She thinks the belief that Hamilton was a Negro was because he was a West Indian, and in the United States, such are regarded as Negroes. Also that there might have been another Alexander Hamilton of slave birth on this island. Gertrude Atherton herself was said to be of Negro ancestry. Mitchell Broadus, in his book on Hamilton, says that the statement he had Negro blood was without foundation. Hamilton's papers were burnt after his death. It is held that this was done in order to hide the alleged Negro strain. The real truth of Hamilton's ancestry, I think, can be found, and this is J.A. Rogers, in the earliest and least known portrait of him, which I showed y'all. In this, he is seen with the kind of woolish hair common among light Negroes in the West Indies, looking like J.A. Rogers, looking like Carter G. Woodson. There was all looking like Du Bois. Also a certain fullness. How you think those brothers back in those days had degrees from Harvard and all that? The mouth is somewhat Negroid. The portrait is by Peale. The portrait is by Peale, a person in that time that wrote a picture, that drew a picture of the man there sitting. Come on, man. When taught about his birth, Hamilton replied, "My blood is as good as those who plumbed themselves on their ancestry." This is interpreted by some writers as referring to his alleged Negro strain. Incidentally, another personage who was at first more important than Hamilton and even Washington, who was said to be of Negro ancestry, was Colonel George William Fairfax, cousin of the great Lord Fairfax. Rupert Hughes says of him, Fairfax was popular, said to be a Negro. He was born in the Bahamas, and his mother was popularly said to have been a dusky beauty. Washington's brother, Lawrence, married Fairfax's sister. Research Life of George Washington, Volume 1, page 183, Volume 2, page 21, in 1926. And for extensive documentation and bibliography on the racial intermixing that has gone on in the United States, see Sex and Race, Volume 2, and Nature Knows No Color Line. Also, the Past for Whites files in the West 135th Street Library. You can research this in the Library of Congress. So now, I'm about to play this film. So if anybody is on my Instagram page, Burning Bush Tabernacle, I hope you go to my YouTube page. It's Kari Ibn Hakeem Goodman Bey. And I think I'm gonna play this little film. And it's a European, Albion, whatever you want to call it, lecturing with a lot of European students, saying a lot of stuff that I already talk about. And I'm gonna play the other film tomorrow because I don't want to play two because I'm already going for 40 minutes. So I'm about to log off Instagram. So peace, everybody. Log on to my YouTube page, Kari Ibn Hakeem Goodman Bey. Peace. So I'm about to play this film for y'all, man. I'm gonna play a little snippet. I'm gonna play this for you. Excuse me. So we don't get it twisted. Thank you for the donation. If you have it on your heart, it's Cash App $ KG Bay. If you don't want to give a donation, it ain't important to you. I get it. Research the Melugeon people, or the Melugeon, Melungeon. Look them up in Ancestry and in real sources, and tell me what they look like. And I tell you, when I say all through history, something has been happening. People have been willingly. When I talk about history, when people just try to give you one perspective, and I might be pronunciating it wrong, Melungeon, Melungeons or Melugeons, a group of people of the southeastern United States who's descended from European settlers and sub-Sahara African slaves. And you start looking at and see what them people look like. When I tell you, man, listen, they're not telling you true Americana, because the real cause of the Civil War, if you had a tint of black blood in you, you was a Negro. So research the Melugeon people. Research them. This stuff be too easy, man. That's why I said everybody else I teach, my own people, want to be taught by somebody else. So I'm gonna see, can y'all see this film? I'm gonna play it real fast. Matter of fact, let me get my little doohickey up. That's what I call it, a doohickey. Let me see how I do this thing. Okay, I can do it like that if you can see it. Let me I'll do it like that. Okay. So, I know what I'm gonna do. Hold on, I'm gonna turn it to the side for y'all can see it real good. Okay. Bam. Okay. All right, I'm working with it, man. I'm getting it. And like I said, if you like the teachers, man, thanks for the donation. It's Cash App $ KG Bay. And I will give you literature. Okay. Bam. So I'm finna play it. Okay. Let me see. Let me see. Hold on.
Arizonans are tough and independent, just like Kirsten Cinema. Every day, she fights to improve the...
Here we go.
Annetta, lock the doors, because what I'm about to say is going to upset some people right next here. Okay. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Exactly. I mean, never mind the question of like how you can discover a place where the inhabitants are watching you arrive from the shore. They weren't wearing pants. Is that what somebody said? I like that. So anyway, there were actually many other mariners before Columbus that discovered America as well. Decades earlier, even eons earlier, there were so many people that were coming across these islands and this continent. But it's only been in the last century that evidence has surfaced and continually grown to indicate that many of these pre-Columbian explorers might have come from Africa. So the first scientist to promote this possibility was Leo Wiener. Born in Russia, Wiener immigrated to the United States in the late 19th century on his way to British Honduras, where he planned to open a vegetarian commune. Well, when that turned out not to be the dream job he expected, he moved back to the United States and he became a professor at Harvard University, as one does. And but in his time in Mesoamerica, he started noticing things. There are lots of things that led him to encounter certain discoveries that made him consider that possibly if the origins of American civilization might actually be in Africa. So he observed so many linguistic and botanical and other similarities that between 1920 and 1922, he published an extensive 3-volume piece called Africa and the Discovery of America. Now, unfortunately, this is 1920s, so as yet no serious archaeological evidence had been done or work had been done to support his botanical theories, because everyone was over raiding tombs in Egypt and things like that. Nod to Howard Carter. So He didn't have a whole lot of other stuff than the names to support him. However, he knew that other clues must exist. For example, he pointed out that Columbus himself was aware that African mariners had preceded him. In his diary of his second voyage, Columbus tells of how the natives of Hispaniola actually had given him gold-tipped metal spearheads that they said were brought by black-skinned people who had come in large boats from the south and southeast. Coincidence? I think not. No. So what's interesting about that, so upon returning to Spain, is that he actually took the spearheads and he sent them away and they had them assayed, and it turned out to be that these spearheads were covered in this metal this alloy that the inhabitants called guanin, and the metallurgists actually found out that this was an alloy of 32 parts. It was like 18 of gold, 6 of silver, 8 of copper, which matched the metal used in spearheads made in Western Africa for thousands of years, as carried by medieval African warriors, including the Mali and the Moors. The West Africans even called this metal
the Mali and the Moors,
the same name used by the natives of Hispaniola. But nothing more was said about that. Conspiracy. Well, probably because, in the interest of Spain, it was in their best interest that they didn't want to have any challenges to their discovery and the claims to the islands of the West Indies. Well, as the poem goes, or it should anyway, in 1493, Columbus stole all he could see. Yeah, so on his second voyage, which was 10 times larger than the first, Columbus went on a frantic but unsuccessful island hopping trip to find gold and spices. He carried along several natives from his newly discovered San Salvador, which the inhabitants called Guanahanvi. Another island that the natives pointed out was really large and was called Soameto. Now, Columbus continued going around whimsically renaming every island he could find, but Leo Wiener, being the curious person and the linguist that he was, and the etymologist, he couldn't help noticing that the origin of these many place names and botanical names in Mesoamerica actually sounded distinctly like other languages in Africa, particularly Bantu and even Arabic. Wiener and numerous other botanists have also puzzled over the presence of certain plants that predated Columbus but originated in Africa. For example, the calabash bottlegourds. Now, this is a species originally from West Africa, where they were well cultivated in America before Europeans arrived. Now, even long before they existed in Indonesia or Polynesia. So, in fact, the Pacific was the last place that bottlegourds actually reached and expanded. Pardon my covfefe. Well, if it were not for transatlantic trade pre-Columbian times, it would be very difficult to explain how certain plants, such as the yam, the sweet potato, domesticated cotton, peanuts, and tobacco, reached both West Africa and the Americas. The spread of the plantain is particularly noteworthy because it could not remain viable if it was carried in salt water. Well, in the 1640s, a Brazilian botanist named George Marcgrave.
You need some water.
Speaking of botany, Ricola. No, there we go. So thank you very much. So the Brazilian botanist George Marcgrave wrote that the establishment of a particular varieties of plantains in this region stands as a strong argument for an ancient maritime contact between the Americas and Africa. That's bananas. B-A-B-A-B-A-N-A-S. That's right. All right. All right, yeah. Okay, so how do these plants and languages, that's going to be good for the video. All right, fix it and pose. All right, use the cough drop. Okay, so how do these plants and languages and other cultural elements get to the Americas? Well, some believe, what's that? Well, cheating. Well, some people believe that, over thousands of years, Africans migrated out of
Coughing up
Africa
and
and then
choking.
Bering Strait, then down into South America, and things like that. Well, another explanation exists, and so get ready. There you go. Let it out of your system. Awesome. Africans had ships. In fact, they had four kinds of. They had unbelievable. They had a shipload of vessels, and they had away. The anchors away. So, in fact, they had four kinds of vessels. And Nubian pottery, this is an example of Nubian pottery with a painting on it that shows a long-hold pottery art that shows either a long-hold boat or a papyrus raft or a hauled-out canoe. And then this other painting beside it is from, the first one was from 3000 BC, and this is a bird's-eye view of an oared riverboat in Chad. And it dates from 3500 BCE. Now, the Africans of Guinea also had dugout canoes hewn from these monumental trees on the coast there. In 1500, just a few years after Columbus's voyage, the Portuguese captain Pacheco Pereira wrote, "In this country can be found the largest canoes made of a single trunk. Some are so large that they hold 80 men." Now, the West Africans were known to lash two dugout canoes together, side by side, and no one questions the seaworthiness of a similar type of Polynesian catamarans. Well, here's a 15th century Portuguese painting of sailing canoes on the Congo estuary. The Portuguese, like Captain Pereira, had heard that African traders were visiting Brazil in the mid-1400s. So to demonstrate that mariners from West Africa could have sailed to the Americas using papyrus vessels as early as 2000 BCE, Norwegian adventurer Tor Heyerdahl actually used ancient shipbuilding techniques in order to construct and sail the Ra 1 and the Ra 2 in 1969 and 70. And generally, some type of sailing vessel will average about 100 miles per day, even without sails. And in an ocean current, something like a raft or a reed boat can average about 60 miles a day. Now, Islamic historian Amir Hajib reported that voyages west from Mali were happening in the year 1311, just 150 years before Columbus. Now, when he asked the Mali emperor, shown here, incidentally, holding
I know who that
globe
is.
of the world made of solid gold.
That's their picture.
Him, well, tell me about this rumor about Atlantic travel. And he said that his predecessor had commissioned an expedition with 200 ships filled with men and a similar number with gold and water and enough provisions for 2 years. And he said, go out and find something. And if you don't come back, so you find something or you run out of food. And unfortunately, only one ship returned, and the captains told the emperor that we sailed for a very long time until we met with what seemed like a river with a strong current flowing in the open sea. I was the last ship, and I turned where I was and did not enter the current. The others disappeared. I do not know what became of them. So, well, this story seems to describe the trade wind-driven equatorial current, or the Canary Current. Now, I apologize if anyone has any cats on their lap at the moment, but so we basically have two rivers, two circular rivers in the ocean here, and you can see it's very easy for Africans from the south and the Angola regions to come up towards the equator going westwards, or from the western coast of Africa north of the equator to go eastwards along that same current. But this Mercator projection doesn't really, in terms of cartography, boom Mercator, it really doesn't do it justice. So let me just, I did this little animation for you to show that they could have taken the Canary Current up and around, and then they go over they fall off the edge of the earth, and then they come back and they make landfall back again in Cape Verde. So it is definitely possible. So They definitely had to. Now, at least a dozen explorers, including Constantine Ravenous, reported seeing blacks upon reaching the New World. In fact, in 1513, Spanish explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who you might know because people named a very popular dance after him,
the Moorish dance.
Anyway, so when Balboa was there, he said he met members of a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. And according to Balboa's log, these men came from a totally black village that was 2 days' journey away. And he figured that these blacks had come from Ethiopia at a much earlier date. So there are also examples of physical evidence, including pre-Columbian African skeletons, which have been found throughout the Americas. Now, dating between 800 BCE and 300 CE, these murals are from the Temple of the Warriors at Chichen Itza. Now, they clearly feature, the color version is easier to see, but they clearly feature 3 races. And it's depicting black and Indian allies and a battle against white invaders. Now, because of their long blonde hair jewelry, a skin-hulled boat that we have here, right there, and also the fact that they're fighting naked, which was common for warriors from Ireland, they believe that these are Celtic warriors. And because this mural shows that blacks are clearly fighting on the side of the Mayans, that they must have been integrated into that society much longer before this painting was done in order to form that form of alliance. Now, there are numerous pre-Columbian figurines with striking similarities to ancient African artwork, and they've been found in Central and South America. In southeastern Mexico, there are 18 rock statues of heads up to 11 feet tall that are facing the ocean, looking east. Now, archaeologists call them the Olmec colossal heads, after the people that carved them. And they were produced for 50 to 200 years and date from at least 900 BCE, when they were mysteriously buried for some reason. So now think about it. It took enormous effort to quarry these. The smallest one was 6 tons, so 6 to 50-ton blocks, to quarry them and carry them 75 miles away from the quarry, and then carve them, and then erect them. These people that they modeled them after must have been important. Whoever they were, they must have been important to be remembered or obeyed or worshipped. Well, Jose Megler Serrano, the archaeologist who first uncovered them, he pointed out that facial features look amazingly like African blacks, and they all display distinctive headgear or protective helmets. Now, however, some people think that these are actually the facial figures of overweight babies. Yeah, I think they needed to wear helmets when they were babies, if they think that. So, and then still others find it easier to believe that instead of Africans, those depicted or responsible for these sculptures, and as well as the Mesoamerican pyramids, were not African Americans, but dun dun dun.
Commercial. It's almost over. Hold on.
Customize and save with Liberty Mutual. Take 96.
Liberty bibbity.
Cut.
That's like,
Hungry? Order some subs to go.
let me fast forward it. Hold on.
And Americans, but dun dun dun.
Y'all crazy. They can see y'all back there.
So
Nope.
why is it that so many people
they can't
have
see
never heard of this alternative of American discovery by the continent's nearest neighbors? So, I mean, look, now the thing, exactly, whoa, where'd all the continents go? So, this is, look at how close this is. I mean, white people don't think that you could go this is closer compared to more than twice the distance that Columbus sailed. This will win a drink for you in a bar game sometime. Which state is closest to Africa? Maine. Yeah, look. See there, you gotta need a globe for this. Look at that. You know, versus yeah, geometry. Science. There you go. So anyway, so very few Americans know this, and why is this? So having examined textbooks throughout for years up until 2018, James W. Lowen says that although some books cite the alternative possibility that Vikings, Norse, or even Irish may have reached America first, not one textbook old or new, mentions the West Africans. So whether or not you give any credence to this admittedly controversial Afrocentric theory, it's obvious that Columbus was not the first to discover America, but the last. So why did he make such an indelible mark on Western people's minds? Well, conquest may have a lot to do with it. Right, Eurocentrism. Unlike the mundanity of perhaps thousands of years of peaceful African transatlantic trade, the quest for gold and world domination makes a much better story. And, the good Queen Isabella was so proud of her fella that she immediately equipped Columbus with 17 ships, 1,500 men, 200 cannons, crossbows, cavalry, and even 20 attack dogs for a second voyage. And another, and another. The story of Columbus remains the most widely accepted version of American discovery, most likely because it was the most recent, the most well-armed, the most documented, and the most similar in appearance to the authors of American textbooks. And one other thing that should be pointed out here is that in the years after Columbus discovered America, in 400 years, 20 million Africans were stripped from the coast of Africa, half of them dying in transit for slavery, who knows how many fleeing inland. And at the same time, within 5 years of Columbus's arrival in the New World, 90% of the indigenous population had died from disease or murder, 90%. So the fact is, that leaves few people to have a written or memory or an oral history of the seafaring of their African discoverers. Historian Samuel D. Marble wrote, "As a subject for research, the possibility of African discovery of America has never been a tempting one for American historians. We choose our own history, or more accurately, we select those vistas of history that more or less kind of explain to have the promise of the greatest satisfaction for ourselves. And we have had little appetite to explore the possibility that our founding father was a black man." So nevertheless, there is considerable evidence to suggest that African mariners also participated in this great adventure, no less than Vikings, the Portuguese, Spaniards, Celts, Chinese, Polynesians, and Arabs, and others. So now I would like to raise a toast to all the discoverers of America before Columbus, wherever you may came from.
Boom.
May more of us discover.
So, if you agree with him or not, that's not for me to debate with you. I challenge you to research. I challenge you to research historically and remove all your feeling. Now, I got one more since I said I'll go for an hour and 30. Let me see if I can find it. This one is eye-opening too, because it's another European or whatever you want to call it.
Wondering who the heck is that?
So, how long is this one? I'm not gonna let this one play that long because this one is too long. I'll do part 2 tomorrow before I do another teaching.
Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you have viewed some of my previous videos, welcome back. This
These are
video should really
Europeans,
raise
no
an eyebrow.
disrespect.
It did for me when I was conducting the research.
Whoa.
This video, as you can see, is titled Prominent Americans You Assumed Were White. How many times when recording or listening to someone speak about history do we assume that that person that they are speaking about is white, just based on their title or position? Oftentimes we, including myself in the past tense, usually assume that the individual is white. This is not a coincidence. In my opinion, this is due to the fact that we as Americans have been conditioned to believe only white people, for the most part, have accomplished anything of importance. How often do we pay attention to historical figures' appearance? I know that while doing research for my videos, there were many books, articles, and newspapers that totally skipped over what the person looked like. In my opinion, this means you don't get a complete description of the person. Another factor, and this is a glaring issue, does the painting, photo, or etching even resemble the written description? Now, I've also come across many books, articles, and newspapers that do have a physical description of the person, but for some reason, these pieces of literature don't make it onto the high school or college course reading list. Although, on the occasions when they do appear on the reading list, and the subject has a shallow or light, tawny, brown, olive, dark, swarthy complexion, the darker complexion gets explained away as the person only having dark hair or eye color or both, which of course totally negates the meaning and definition of complexion. This false definition of complexion has been acceptable by academia for a very long time. However, now that the internet is available to the masses, it allows one to search thousands of keywords in seconds. You should soon come to realize, or at least some people realize, that there is something majorly wrong with how history has been portrayed. Again, as I always do in my videos, I will give you the definition of the word complexion. There are three basic categories when most people are described in history: complexion, hair color, and eye color. Although in modern times we can change our complexion. Take Michael Jackson, for example. He kept his same hair color, however, he has had various complexions. He went from a dark complexion to a pale complexion. He is a perfect example of the extreme differences in complexions. He went from black to white. This is my theory. After conducting years of research, black Europeans of the colonial era and after did not consider themselves Negroes, or what you and I would consider the typical black person today. There were several reasons for this, and I don't want to delve into it too heavily. I can do that in another video.
Because if you were black, you were the slave.
Black Europeans obviously were of a different culture. They spoke European languages. They had distinct accents. The elites considered themselves educated and intellectual. Some also had slight variations in eye color and hair texture, and this was due to hundreds of years of isolation and in many cases mixtures of people. Although, after looking at evidence of black European sculptures, books, journals, etchings, jewelry, and religious paintings, etc., it's clear that many black Europeans resemble the typical African American we see walking around today, with all their variations in complexions, eye color, and hair texture. As far as the term Negro and who the Europeans called Negro, they were referring to the Aboriginal people of America, the AKA Indians. Okay, I can hear people now. Oh, sure. Now the American Indians were black people too. This is exactly what I'm saying. There's a huge amount of evidence for this assertion, but I'm not going to cover that now. There are researchers who have hours and hours of research backing up this theory. I will do a video on that topic and link all the researchers to that video. Due to the obvious white supremacist tilt on what is provided to the public via our educational system, especially since the Woodrow Wilson administration, pointing out complexion is one of the only ways that the reader can determine the ethnicity of the subject, or in modern terms, is the person black or white. I mentioned Woodrow Wilson because it was during his administration that much of the common historical knowledge was omitted, destroyed, and rewritten, to be replaced by Woodrow Wilson's historical point of view, which was based on the lost cause narrative. The lost cause narratives typically portray the Confederacy as a noble, just, and heroic group. So with Wilson's presidential power and academic influence, and also having been the former president of Princeton University, the majority of the nation stopped using the common history books of that era and started using the historical books literally written by Woodrow Wilson. A 10-volume set of history books that, in my estimation, changed the nation. And just as a side note, the Board of Trustees of Princeton University on June 22nd, 2020, released a statement that read, Board of Trustees concludes that Wilson's racist views and policies make him an inappropriate namesake for the School of Public and International Affairs in Residential College. The current president, Christopher Eisgruber, I may have pronounced that wrong, in a statement when explaining why the board made its decision said, Wilson's racism was significant and consequential, even by the standards of his own time. He segregated the federal civil service after it had been racially integrated for decades, thereby taking America backward in its pursuit of justice. He not only acquiesced in, but added to the persistent practice of racism in this country, a practice that continues to do harm today. He went on further to say, and I am paraphrasing, Princeton is part of an America that has too often disregarded, ignored, or excused racism, allowing the persistence of systems that discriminate against Black people. And yet another leading cause of misinformation regarding European and American history was due to the direct and indirect influence of the Daughters of the Confederacy.
A
great
revolution.
video to watch regarding the impact they had on American history was created by Vox, V-O-X, on
They changed
YouTube.
those hats to the white
And it's
feds.
titled How Southern Socialites Rewrote Civil War History. Okay, so now let me show you more evidence as to why I believe that there were thousands of Black Europeans that immigrated to America from Europe. Okay, so now let me show you more evidence as to why I believe that there were thousands of Black Europeans that immigrated to America from Europe. All right, so I'm going to start off with the great Daniel Webster. And so for many of you, you're wondering, who the heck is Daniel Webster? Well, Daniel Webster was born in Salisbury, New Hampshire, January 18th, 1782. His parents were Ebenezer Webster and Abigail Webster. Ebenezer was a tavern owner, farmer, politician, and finally a judge. The Websters were of English and Scottish extraction. In Daniel's early life, he was educated at the Phillips Exeter Academy, and then he went on to Dartmouth College. Daniel was a lawyer and a statesman who represented New Hampshire and Massachusetts in the U.S. Congress. He also served as Secretary of State under Presidents Harrison, Tyler, and Fillmore. He argued over 200 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court and was a member of the Federalist Party and the National Republican Party, and then the Whig Party. Okay, so my first piece of evidence is from the 53rd Congress, 3rd Session, Senate document, Proceedings in Congress upon the Acceptance of the Statutes of John Stark and Daniel Webster, presented by the state of New Hampshire in 1895. As you can see on page 84, I quote, Captain Ebenezer Webster, father of the godlike Daniel, the great Constitution expounder, whose statue stands alongside that of Stark in yonder hall, and whose name is writ with his high on the scroll of fame. How little these men could have thought that this sublime portion awaiting them when Daniel, a young lawyer at Portsmouth, on his way to the courts in Concord, and Stark, living in the retirement of his farm, met at the old hotel in Hooksett, and the hero of Bennington spoke from the sale of himself at one time for 40 pounds, and was ready to believe Daniel was the son of Captain Webster because of the same deep, swarthy color of his face, only blacker. Again, pay attention. Not only is he saying Daniel's father was the same deep, swarthy complexion, he says Daniel's face is even blacker. He doesn't mention his hair or eye color. He specifically mentions his face. Again, let me bring to your attention where this document comes from. It's from the 53rd Congress, 3rd Session, Senate document, which is an excellent primary source. Okay, so let's look at my next piece of evidence, and this comes from the website Encyclopedia of World Biography. Under notable biographies, we have Daniel Webster. Okay, so you can see under the childhood section for Daniel Webster, first paragraph, it states, while a child, Daniel earned the nickname Black Dan from his dark skin and black hair and eyes. Again, as I have repeatedly said, complexion means the color of skin on someone's face, which is why they had to further describe his hair and eye color, because complexion is a separate category of description. Okay, so
Nationality,
my next piece of evidence was
race,
a book
status.
titled Life of Daniel Webster, given to Harvard Library in 1938, written by George Ticknor Curtis in 1870. As you can see on page 7, chapter titled Family Complexion, it goes on to read, this grandmother, his father's mother, was Susanna Bachelder, a descendant of the Reverend Stephen Bachelder in the county of Rockingham. She had black hair and black eyes, and was a woman of uncommon strength of character. Her son, Mr. Webster's father, inherited from her the Bachelder complexion. Her other sons had the Webster characteristics. The same division of parental traits took place in Mr. Webster's own generation. He himself has said that of his 4 brothers, only one was dark like himself. The other 3 ran off into the general characteristics belonging to the name. In fact, however, I have understood that his own brother, Ezekiel, who was represented as a model of manly beauty, although his complexion was not so dark as Daniel's, had black hair. Okay, so let's break this down just a little bit. So first, the author acknowledges that Daniel's grandmother, his father's mother, had the Bachelder complexion, which he inherited from his father via his grandmother. The author further writes that even Daniel stated that of his 4 brothers, only one was dark like himself. The other 3 resembled the Webster family characteristics. And it goes on further to say that Daniel's brother Ezekiel had a dark complexion, but not as dark as Daniel's. And I'd like to bring this to your attention again. No one's describing Daniel, his father, or his brother as having a shallow or yellow, light brown or brown complexions. They're consistently saying dark complexions, alluding to the fact that these Bachelders were very dark-skinned people. All right, so let's move on in the same book to page 8, and we're going to be a little more than halfway down the page, and we'll pick up where it states, he has a complexion, as General Stark said of him, which burnt gunpowder will not change, and a heart, as his great son has said of him, which he seemed to have borrowed from a lion. Okay, so you see where General Stark stated that burnt gunpowder could not change his complexion. Burnt gunpowder is extremely black, so Stark's statement meant Daniel's complexion was so dark black that you couldn't tell the difference between his skin and burnt gunpowder. All right, so my next piece of evidence comes from a newspaper clipping from the Salem Gazette, dated February 18th, 1834. And the clipping goes on to say, the Richmond Enquirer says, the course of Mr. Webster is anticipated with great interest. He is at this time one of the most prominent men on the chessboard. But we confess that we look to his movements with fear and suspicion. He is a man of gigantic powers, but they originally received a wrong direction. It is related by the white travelers in Africa that the ebony natives imagined the fair complexion of their visitors to be the effect of disease, and consider white as hideous for the human skin. The judgment of the Richmond Enquirer as to the direction of Mr. Webster's powers resembles that of the Africans about complexion. So basically, the Richmond Enquirer is stating that his complexion resembles that of an African. All right, so moving on to an additional piece of evidence, we can see page 3 of the book, Daniel Webster, the Orator, copywritten in 1903 by Albert E. Pillsbury, also located at the Harvard Library. The quote goes on to state, speaking about Daniel, he was a delicate child with a large head, coal black hair, great black eyes, which none who saw them ever forgot, and a complexion so swarthy that they called him Little Black Dan. All right, so again, Daniel's complexion is referred to as black, which is where his nickname came from. It didn't come from his hair color or eye color, because that would make no sense. Okay, so let me ask you, how many of you know a white person with pale, fair, or fresh skin complexions that also have black hair and dark eyes and have a nickname with the adjective black in it? That wouldn't make any sense. Like Daniel, people with nicknames that have black in them probably 99% of the time means or meant that that person had dark skin or complexion. Okay, so my next piece of evidence comes from the book, The True Daniel Webster, written by Sidney George Fisher, published in 1911. All right, so on page 21, you can see it states, on his father's side, he was descended from the Bachelders, or the Batchilders, a dark complexion, dark-haired family from whom the poet Whittier was supposed to be descended. Okay, so moving down to the bottom of the page there, last paragraph, it says, his two descendants, Webster and Whittier, who are said to have resembled him and somewhat each other in striking appearance, would seem to indicate a prepotency to genius in the strain. Poetic and romantic sentiment filled the lives of both of them and was the foundation of Webster's oratory. Webster had the dark eyes, hair, and complexion of the Batchelders. Okay, we're moving on to page 22 now. Okay, and continue the quote, in excessive degree. Okay, so I keep giving you evidence of Daniel and his family's complexion. Now the author mentions Whittier, as in a famous poet, John Greenleaf Whittier, as being descended from the same dark complexion family. Uh-oh, spoiler alert. How far down the rabbit hole are we willing to uncover the truth? I say all the way. Okay, so we'll get to the poet, John Whittier, a little bit later in the video. All right, so still looking at Daniel Webster, on page 51 of the same book, it states, Ezekiel too joined the New England aristocracy of education. He was of dark hair and complexion like the father and Daniel, very handsome, and famous all his life in New Hampshire for his good looks. His ability was of the solid, conservative order, equal, as some suppose, to Daniel's, and he became a prominent citizen of New Hampshire, an important man in politics, a member for many years of one or the other branch of the legislature, and a much sought legal advisor. But he had, it seems, none of the brilliance or quickness of apprehension of his distinguished brother, and died suddenly while speaking in the courtroom at Concord at the age of 49. So, according to this, dark complexion Ezekiel was also of the New England aristocracy education. Funny thing, I grew up and was educated in New England, and not a peep about the famous Webster family being black. Okay, so moving on to page 69 of the same book, I'm going to start off with a quote that states, his brothers and sisters had none of his marvelous power. He stood alone among them. In the animal kingdom, naturalists used to give to such sudden development in a species the name sport, and in modern times, the Darwinians call it a mutation. It is impossible to account for such appearances, as it is impossible to account for Mr. Webster's contemporary genius, Napoleon, the most extraordinary mutation in human intellect and physical endurance that has ever been known. Perhaps the cross of the blonde, slender Webster type of outdoor farming people with a dark complexion, heavy built, indoors, intellectual, learned Batchelder strain was a lucky outcross, what the animal breeders call a nick. Such a combination of opposites will sometimes give us a hunting dog or a horse, unmatched for courage, breadth, and speed, as Sir Walter Scott would say. But even in this profound explanation is merely another way of saying, I don't know. So basically, as I interpret this, I believe the author was baffled by how the dark complexioned Daniel could have stood out virtually alone amongst all of his family with his genius and skill, not to be duplicated by any of them, even though many of them had the white Webster family complexions. I definitely feel a hint of racism coming from the author. Remember, he was writing this book in the early 1900s, more than 50 years after Daniel's death, and white supremacy was really ramping up, making the way for the Woodrow Wilson era. So before I end this video, I want to show you images of Daniel Webster that I found online. Now, as you can see, these are 3 typical images of Daniel that you find when conducting research online. Does anything immediately jump out at you? Yeah, well, the most glaring thing is that Daniel was not shown as being dark complexioned, let alone swarthy or black. Remember, his childhood nickname was Little Black Dan, and according to his descriptions, he's supposed to have really dark skin. This is obviously not the case based on the images that I was able to find of him. As I mentioned before, whoever owns the media, that's like newspapers, libraries, historical societies, photos, paintings, etc., or can provide access to them, controls what the public sees. Therefore, we can...
So I'm just going to stop that right there. I don't want to go too deep. Because, man, it's much, much more. And like when I say much, much more in the document, but I just like to get you to think. Think about the time period. Research Angelo Solomon. Research Angelo Solomon. Research Angelo Solomon, the first Moorish Mason. Research what he looked like. Oh, somebody asked the name of that film. I would just like I asked everybody, man. Like when I do lectures in college, it's a certain etiquette that we do when we lecturing. And one, say if you were in the physical, and as the lecture going on, we wait till after the lecture to ask certain things, or before the speaking. You know what I mean? But it's called Prominent Americans You Assume Were White. That was the name of the film. The other film was a professor. I forget his name. I have to get it back to you. Let me find it. I'll tell you the other film. Hold on one second. The other film is Black Before Columbus Came, The African Discovery of America. I used to play all these films on college campus. We used to have a debate and things, and we dissect the truth. That's what we're supposed to do as a researcher. You know, and so I didn't want to stay all too far in the film. You can watch it for yourself at your own time. But if you like the teachings, man, gratitude for the donations, Morris. I'm going to continue to teach. It's Misnomer Black History Month. If I'm illuminating history to you, gratitude, and you know I am. But research Angelo Solomon, the first Moorish Mason, and look at who he was. Because I haven't even, like I said, what they saw and what the writers in the first century saw, what they wrote, man. One of my brothers, I'm on my other thing. He like, Noble, go more. No, I don't got time to go all the way. But it's just a lot, man. But we don't know. Like when we look at coins and stuff that we found of people and things, and people don't be telling you when I show you how things be in the museum, especially in the Royal Archives. Like when we talk about certain, like Tacitus, Roman historian, what they talk about. And when you look at the dates, you got to see the historians lived while the so-called Jesus was alive. So you got to believe the eyewitness, the so-called Europeans, over someone that say they wasn't there. And that's what they hide from you. And telling you what it was. Jesus' name spelled in Aramaic, Y-S, even though, they spell it, have some things Y-S-H-W, or Yahshua. In the British Library, the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 18 to 25. Man, I speak science. Man, I have degrees in this. I show it every time from Grand Canyon University. And I have minors as well. I've done oral dissertations and everything. So when the people say you can't run in the name Jesus in ancient Hebrew manuscripts, agree with them because it's true. But make sure you mention that his original name, the YHWH, the masculine and feminine, or the YHSH, I'll show you in the what they call themselves, the Jehovah Witnesses, in their little blue book. It can be found in the British Library and other Hebrew manuscripts. Just like when I talk about the Book of Mormon, and I show you that a lot of that stuff is plagiarized from a book called View of the Hebrews. And it was necessary for the YHWH or the YSHW to be translated in different languages per scripture, Mark 13 and 10, that says that the gospel must be published among all nations. So I just want to make things clear, man. It ain't no thing. Strange request from the church. Justin Martyr, historian, suggests that official archives of Augustus Caesar be examined to prove the birth of the YHWH. Tertullian, philosopher and historian, suggests that the evidence of YHSH birth is in archives at Rome. I mean, the image of the tribe of Levi, the sons of Asaph, See 1 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 16 and 19 and 21, mention the Sennacherib, the Flemish Britain Museum, where a lot of this stuff be at. Hey, I know it did. A lot of stuff be in museums. I'm telling people, man. If you a traveler, that's like I say that Zachariah Stench, them Freemasons, and even Behold a Pale Horse, a Freemason, it ain't no aliens. When they be talking about some Anunnaki, man, that's the Iberians, that's the Canaanites, that's the Phoenician. And all this stuff is in the British museums or Russian icona. When they talk about sketches of the so-called Christ, the Old Testament and the New Testament, all that stuff, sketches of the so-called Jesus, according to available information in the Bible. The Apostle John described Jesus in first chapter of Revelations 1, 9 and 14, but no one seems to be paying attention. Jesus came from the tribe of Judah. Isn't that what it teach you in more science? So it stands to reason that he should look like his brother. John said his hair is like lamb's wool, and feet look like as if they were burnt in a furnace, and eyes that were a flame of fire. John the Apostle describes Jesus as being black after he rose from the grave, after the resurrection. But then let's see how prophets describe Jesus. Jesus the Nazarene, Matthew 2 and 23. As said by the prophet Jesus, Yeshua, shall be called a Nazarene, Numbers 6, 1 and 5. While the Nazarene was under a vow, he was to let the locks of his hair grow. Lamentations 4 and 1, 7 and 8, and 5 and 10. The visage or the face. So when you see visage, you got to know that means face of the Nazarites. When who got the call to build Solomon Temple? Haram Abif of Tyre, the Nazarite, is blacker than coal. Our skin was black like an oven. And then it gives you images of what the so-called Jesus of the Bible would have looked like. Hebrew Levite musicians with cornrows and fringes in their museums. Images of Judeans that haven't been seen in over 2,000 years to commemorate coins of black Judeans. Vespasian, Caesar, 70 AD. The image of black male on the left and the black female on the right are two black Hebrew Israelites from 7 AD. These are images in the Vespasian Caesar had placed on these coins to commemorate his destruction of Jerusalem. These images are from the perspective of the ruler of the known world at the time. And why would I not believe this report? This is their writers. We don't have to be arguing with nobody. Flavius Josephus, Israelite historian, 37 AD. He was 7 years old when Jesus was crucified and writes about Yahshua being crucified on the cross. Pontius Pilate, governor. I'm just saying what they say. With their books. He was there and he writes letters talking about Yahshua, Jesus, the prophet, how he tried and condemned Yahshua. Tacitus, the Roman historian. Gaius Suetonius, Tarquinius, the Roman historian. All this stuff what we say, we can just say from their writers. King Mithras II of Parthia, black Iranian king, 123 to 88 BC, coin found. Persian soldiers that the European they talk about, some Anunnaki. When you start looking at them, they wish they are the Iberians. When I show you in the Greek history, when you go into Greek restaurants, those pictures on the wall with those cornrows, ask them. They are Iberians, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians. They all the same. I've just been teaching this. Mesopotamia. I'm going to show you an image of the black Mesopotamians from Akkad, but in your Bible, in Genesis 10 and 10, it's spelled ACCAD. ACCAD. That's how it's spelled in your Bible. AKKAD. I'll show you how the English language has changed. The Akkad, the ACCAD in your Bible was part of the ancient kingdom of Nimrod, one of the black sons of Ham. I'm going to show you Vespasian's commemoration coin, Destruction of Judah, 70 AD. Coin depicts Judeans as black people. Coin price was $850 to $30,000. This image of a Jew was recorded by his Roman captor, Titus, and Vespasian, Caesar. As you can see, he is depicted as a black man with an afro and a huge Negro nose. This coin and many others like them were minted in 79 AD to commemorate Vespasian's conquest of Judea. Just like when I show y'all Judah Trembles Under Rome that they got on Amazon for almost $1,000. Go to mypdfbooks.com. If I was you, I'll run and get it, because in probably a couple more months, they're going to make the book part like $2,500. It's already almost $900 on Amazon. This was a historic event to the Romans. I always tell people that you may not think much about these ancient coins, but the coin dealers place great value on these artifacts, and so do I. I got a lot of them. That's why I say a lot of this stuff is in their museums. That's why when they tried to burn up everything in Alexandria, a lot of the people had libraries like myself. They'll whitewash stuff out, pictures and everything. So, any questions, Morris? Look at Black Charlemagne, King of the French. Historian Tacitus describes an ancient Iberian. The Iberians are a brown complexion people with curly hair. The Anthological Review, Volume 8, Anthropological Society of London. And I can show you all the stuff being in museums. And they know they be having a hard time of images of a black Charlemagne, but once you research where he was born and who the original inhabitants of that land were, then you might be able to accept the truth. Charlemagne was born in Gaul. Gaul was the ancient name of France, and it was the black Iberians that colonized and lived in this region of the Roman Empire. Thanks for the donation, Morris. Of particular interest is the coat of arms that Charlemagne displays on his shield. On his shield, right there, when I talk about somebody tell you your last name of the slaves, the coat of arms. I'm trying to tell you what I know. It's the coat of arms on his shield. And you will do well to place close attention to the two black eagles, which represents the two black Caesars who ruled the Roman West and the Roman East. Y'all don't know that when y'all see the double-edged eagle on the Mason's head? They ain't telling you what it is, but it was two black Caesars who ruled the Rome West and the Rome East. And when the white Habsburgs took power in the 18th century, the two black eagles were replaced with the two white eagles to emphasize, you know, the different power. And that's what's the beginning of the New World Order when, you know, Europeans, Albions, whatever you want to call it about, began to dominate. I'm going to show you pictures. This stuff is in museums. Can't get mad at me. I don't know why people want to be mad. I ain't scared of nothing. The law protects me. The European supports what I'm doing. Bronze portrait bust of a lady of Ambery, Iberia, Spain, circa 100 AD. Historian Tacitus describes an ancient Iberian. The Iberians are a brown complexion people with curly hair. See? The black Iberians were the original settlers of Spain, France, and Gaul. This is a fact, not conjecture. At the end of each image, I shall place a timeline date to show you the black emperors as we move on a timeline of life. Charlemagne was a black Iberian, plain and simple. These people were the earliest inhabitants of Europe. They subdued the land, wore the crowns, and fought great battles. The oldest bones that have been found in Europe have been that of black people, not whites, and their scholars know this, but yet the whites insist on lying about the past. I am no longer in shock or awe at the images, manuscripts, and documents that are being unearthed around the world that depict the ancient world as being ruled by blacks. Think about this for one moment. You have been taught to believe in the existence of the dinosaur because the archaeologists and museum curators exhibit their bones, which is simply a still picture of a being that once roamed the earth. And why ain't no dinosaurs? You don't hear that in no Africa, no continent like that. If you believe that the dinosaur existed because of his recovered bones, why do you find it hard to believe that the Roman emperors were black when I show you recovered images of their blackness? I could strip these images of their flesh, their nasal, their nose, their cavity, their nose cavity, will reveal that these men were black. When I talk about the Carmen Dayton, and we have a perfect fit because the pen and the artifacts are evenly matched. So I go with the image, the timeline, 800 AD. I'm about to show you a picture. Otto the Great, location of artifacts, ancient crest Saxon coins. Y'all see this stuff? Don't let nobody get you with that folly. The ancient Etruscans were the black Iberians. Otto, I trace his lineage back to Friuli, or Fuuli, Fuiuli, Italy, which has been colonized and inhabited by the ancient Etruscans, Etruscans. The Etruscans were originally the black Iberians who have settled Spain, Gaul, and France and Italy. The historians love to write that this Otto I was a Saxon, but what they fail to tell you is that the ancient Saxons were black people. Also, modern-day Germany was originally a part of the French, the Gaul, or Iberian people. The pen lines up with the archaeology, which means we have a perfect match. So I have to go along with the archaeology that says Otto the Great was a black Holy Roman emperor and king. Timeline 929 AD. The Black Saxon, Frederick III of Saxony. Notice the coat of arms. This stuff is in their museums. Man, everybody should be like Islam, man. This is history. I teach on the college campuses, man, and when I do lectures and it be packed. Elector Frederick III, the Black Saxon, location of artifact in the ancient crest Saxon coins. African president in early Europe, Ivan van Sertima, New Brunswick, translation, publishers. Just like I show y'all the Golden Age of the Moors, the blacks that ruled Asia and Europe by Ivan van Sertima. I got all those books available for a fraction of the price you'll get to Amazon. Why don't more support it? And then I teach the books, and then I show you how we operate in real life. Black King Bela of the Hungarians, or the Hungarians. I just want to show y'all pictures. Charles V of France, made down to the year 1380. And Charles V, the King of France, has his family portrait painted black. Now, why would they do this? He had himself, his wife, and his child painted black because he was a black man. And if you remember, the French, the Gauls, were originally of the Iberian stock. The ancient Iberians, black people that settled in modern-day France and Germany. These are facts. Timeline 1380, not no goofy-ass aliens. King Edward III of England. Come on, man. This misnomer, month. They know this stuff is in the museums. The Picts, the blacks ruled Scotland, Britain, and Ireland from 200 to 850 AD. In the Annals of Caledonian Picts and Scots, Joseph Ritten's Volume 2, page 7 and 27. The Picts are brown complexion with curly hair. African president in early Europe. I got that. My PDF books. Look how much they sell it on Amazon. Ivan van Sertima, New Brunswick translation, published 2007, page 225. The Brit look like the Ethiopian. Wait till it open back up when I go to Europe and I start showing y'all all this. And I go over there just like this. And I go to all these universities and in these museums. And most of the stuff is in private museums with rich counts. When I'm talking about money, it's nothing. And they got all your stuff locked up. Watch. I don't pay nothing when I travel. Once you match the artifacts with the truthful pen of the ancient historians, these black images of King Edward III should come as no surprise to you. Image location, George Chapel, Windsor. King Edward III was a descendant of the Picts and started his order himself around 1348. And make no mistake about it, this image is authentic. We began this truth march in the year of 800 AD, and we have traveled 600 years into the future, and there is still a black ruling presence in Europe. Timeline 14th AD. When I jump in 101 amazing facts about the black man or whatever, I might be quoting J.A. Rogers' book wrong, and you think some KKK uniform is original from them. They stole all that from the so-called blacks in Seville, the priests. These is facts. King Charles I of England. Look, man. And then I tell you to read in Maccabees. What is it in Maccabees? Read in Maccabees, since they love to quote the Bible, 3 and 48. Read Maccabees 3 and 48 and tell me what you get. Ancient and Modern Brits, Retrospective, Volume 3. By who? The European writer David Mac Ritchie. The Picts, the blacks ruled Scots, Britain, and Iberian. You can find that on pages, I told y'all. The images comes directly from the front cover of the book. Leviathan, or Leviation, or Leviathan, Leviathan, that was written by Thomas Hobbes, in which he describes King Charles I of England as a black man. Now you must keep in mind that this is the original book. Later editions depict this black King Charles of England as a white king. King Charles was from the Stuart line. Stuart means black. And this line of black Stuarts ruled Scotland. That's what you don't know. England and Ireland, and claimed France as their dominion. These images lines up with the writings of the ancient historians, and it's proof indeed that the black Stuart line of kings ruled Ireland, Britain, and Scotland. They also laid claim to France. King Charles was executed in the Second English Civil War, which was the race war. And you have to see the beauty in this education that we have received in America. We have been deliberately denied the existence of our royal heritage in Asia, Europe, and Africa. We are charged outrageous amounts of money to attend these colleges in America for an education that is basically a lie. And then to add insult to injury, the debt is placed on your credit report, which can never be forgiven. I know that this is going to sound fantastical or whatever to some of you and ridiculous to others, but it appears that we are in need of a congressional hearing on the information that is being taught in the misnomer Black history departments across America. Queen Charlotte of England. See, this is what I do in the universities, man. I ain't just here to argue with nobody that look like me. I get paid to do this on the universities. I come here, ask for donations for my brothers and sisters, and I teach systematically. I have a school. So the only time I say when I'm gonna be gone is because a lot of times you can't do things all the time for free. And you must go where people know your name like Cheers and they want to be educated. We examined the church in the wilderness, the nations present in Jerusalem, and on the day of the Pentecost, the New Testament letters, the 7 churches in Revelation, the Byzantine Empire, the Black Roman West using the 2 keys, the artifacts, the written history, all that timeline. We've seen that Europe had been ruled by black kings and has sustained a black population at least until the 1800 AD. And I'd be lying if I was trying to peddle for 1 minute that Europe was completely black, because I didn't say that. Historians recorded that the white barbarians, when I show you by our writer Sheikh Anta Diop, the white barbarians overran the west leg of Roman empires in the 5th century AD. And this would mean that even though the Roman Western Empire fell, there were still black kingdoms within the empire that managed to survive. And this was one of the major things that I was never exposed to in college or in any of the churches that I have attended. That's the writer. But I have, when I tell people in the universities, in the other churches that don't look like me, that's where I'm accepted. I own people under a religious spell, under a slavery spell by our own people. That's why I tell people I can't be bought. The truth will make you free. Abracadabra. Now you see me, now you don't. The destruction of the Negro mind. Any questions? When you research William Dunning, historian at Columbia University, he talked about blacks never created civilization of any kind. This ideology fueled the movie Gone with the Wind. Barnes' American History from Grammar, grades page 334. All Negroes are ignorant of public business. Although the Negro was free, he was ignorant and unfit to govern himself. See that bull crap? And then when I take you to Jim Crow Museum, the Jim Crow Museum in Grand Rapids, I'll show you all this stuff, man, what they thought about a black person. How they depicted you with monkey lips and all those cartoons on Bugs Bunny. Y'all don't remember all that stuff? All that stuff is in the Jim Crow Museum. When I talk about the Kingdom of Judah, when I talk about the map maker, Emmanuel Bowen, I'm going to leave y'all with that. The map was created by the royal map maker, Emmanuel Bowen, for 2 European kings, King George II of England and King Louis of France. And if you look at center of the map, to the right, you will see a caption that says, Kim of Judah. Interpreted, it means Kingdom of Judah, the KM. This is the seed of Judah from your Bibles, ladies and gentlemen. But what gives this map great significance is that it was the original name of the so-called slave coast. And what you got to understand that every Negro that came into the Americas as a slave is from the tribe of Judah, meaning you are the original Jew. They knew this in England and France in 1747, actually 1,000 years ago. And they knew that here in the United States, they never taught this to their white students before slavery, and they didn't teach it to the emancipated Negroes Moors after slavery. In fact, Moors, even after the very moment, while I'm telling you this, the map is still not being used in African American history courses all over the Americas, and this is in their libraries. No disrespect again, your fake black historian professors have never seen this map, and if they did, they wouldn't have the courage to show you it to the misnomer black students for fear of losing their job. I ain't in fear of nothing because the Europeans sit under my wing. I teach this. That's why I said I don't have to sign no contract, which is an oath for me to follow, to teach the curriculum, which is under the reading list. They only gonna teach you a certain thing. I'm a scholar. I went to academia to be a scholar, to be able to speak on things. They are more interested in holding on the American nightmare. Come on, man. All this history, all this Americana that I break down, it ain't no mystery. Remember the Urantia book in 1955, y'all. The clay tablets of Sumer were discovered in Mesopotamia, called the Urantia book, and it mentions a place called Delmum, where the people never see death, and it's referencing the Garden of Eden, and the people refer to themselves as the black-headed people. These people depict themselves as black-headed people, y'all. People like Sargon the Great. This place was located in the part of the Black Byzantine Empire, which is no surprise to me, y'all. The science been out since 1955 and has been known among the scholarship community, but has never have been in the light of day in the government-sponsored school system. And to be honest with Moors, I've been knowing about this. The Elba tablets, 1974, the Elba tablets were discovered in the ancient city of Tel Mardich, and all there were 1,800 tablets found. The tablets were discovered by the Italian Paolo Matthias in 1974 and 1975. These tablets also spoke of the black-headed people, and the artifacts from the dig depicted the people as black. This find was located in ancient Mesopotamia, which was one part of the Black Byzantine Empire. Come on, man. Hebrew manuscripts found in West Africa. The International News, January 2003. So-called Arab extremists were caught burning ancient manuscripts at Timbuktu, but it was the Hebrew manuscripts that caught the attention. And mine and the writer, you have Hebrew manuscripts in West Africa, unless there was at that time when the people spoke Hebrew. Like I told you, in Egypt, they had 2 Hebrew pharaohs, Sabatos and Sebatos. The artifacts are a perfect match. The Hebrew manuscripts match the map created by Emmanuel Bowen, calling the slave coast Judah. Come on, man, y'all know I'm telling the truth. Get the Book of Mormon, and then I'll highlight the view of the Hebrews that the Book of the Mormon is plagiarized after, and they don't give credit to it. So I leave y'all with that, man. I gave y'all almost 2 hours of history. I'm gonna show you. Look at this Arabia image of a black Arabian found in Saudi Arabia near a town named Taj or Taj, Thaj. Image is the carbon date to before 2000 AD. Location artifact, Smithsonian Arthur Sacco Gallery. Look. So I'll leave y'all with that, man. Thanks for the donations, man. If y'all gave a donation, gratitude. Because like I said, after this month, we're going to be off here. We're going to be strictly just private on Zoom. I'm going to be doing no more videos on YouTube, maybe just popping on here, just saying what's up to the people, trying to get everybody to join us privately on Zoom. So like I said, for this month of so-called Black History Month, I'm trying to court my brothers and sisters and bring y'all and bring everybody privately to my Zoom platform, which is all right. I'm going to be done doing public things. So right now, I'm trying to get everybody confidence to say, if you want to learn and be systematically taught, you have every right to be a member. And the donation that you'll give is minuscule, is small, to join us privately on Zoom. And I can show y'all like Herodotus, how he quotes the lineages of the ancient Greeks. Remember, I'm talking about ancient Greek. Man, Clio, the Black Ionians, Ionians, Euthrip, the Black Arcadians, the Spartans, and the Minions. Book 4, the male poem, the Spartans and the Minions are black. Book 8, Urania, Acanians, Thessaly, Henialus, Athenians are black. And when I show y'all all these books, man, y'all will be like, where are these at? In private museums. I've done these lectures. It's just nothing to argue about. Every time I do lectures, I get no debate. Mari painting, Scene Palace of Zimri. There's nothing to argue about. And then when I get into a lot of the codex and really show you things, it's nothing to argue about. Any questions, man? Like I said, gratitude for the donations. You can be doing anything, but you're here listening to me. Let me tell y'all, let's show y'all this other picture in the Vatican Library. And I'll show y'all this. Then I'll show you the Moors of Tektorax in Egypt. St. Mark with the fezzes on. I'll show you. I got it in my other St. Mark book. Stuff I got from the museum. And I got a lot of proof. Byzantine Emperor John Cominian II, an eldest son, being crowned by Black Jesus. The blown up head of the Black Byzantine Emperor John Cominian II, nappy hair and all. Look at it. This is what the stuff that they have when I be going to the Greek light, when I be going to the Catholic Church or the Greek churches. They got all this stuff behind gates and gold. And everybody know I'm telling the truth. Byzantine Emperor Nicephorus, the 3rd century. See? Image of Michael the 7th on back of the Holy Crown of Hungary. Location of the artifact, illuminated manuscript. Yep. And then I'll show you all type of stuff, man, in the libraries. When I said a scholarship, I went right into their libraries and pulling up all maps, pulling up everything. And then when I went in the Royal Archives and went into Scottish ancient history, didn't nobody want to hear nothing else. I like, come on, man, y'all ain't gonna lie. Everything I'm talking about is recorded. And the European agree with me because they wrote it. So how you gonna let somebody tell you you don't have a rich history? This stuff, come on, man. Look how they try to whitewash the stuff. The book of Acts 16:14. Like you can see the ancient, the image of the ancient king of Pergamum, Pergamum, is that of a black man. And when you get deeper into science and the research, you won't be surprised. It's the location of Pergamum within the Central Asian country of Turkey, Antilolia, Anatolia, will give away the color of these people. This king is depicted as black with nappy short afro and nappy facial hair. What's the conclusion? The people of Pergamum were black. I mean, this stuff be very simple. They be having this stuff when I talk about Russian icona, and then they just try to change a lot of it. And then they try to use excuses and stuff. I'm like, dude, man, okay. And then I really get into museums, and every European agree exactly what I'm saying when I get in their museums. When I talk about Herodotus quotes the lineage of the Greeks, the Greek Herodotus writes works called the Histories, and they were divided into 9 books. Clio or Clio, Talila. I'm finna give you all the names and I'm out of here. Herodotus quotes the lineage of the Greeks. I want y'all to write this down. Thanks for the donation, man. One of my guys said, man, I feel embarrassed that my kid go to school, get an African-American history degree. You need to be teaching all these kids. I do. All the kids that I teach that go to college, man, and they trump that pseudo and that Negro and that Eurocentric propaganda. I teach peer-reviewed scholarly research. I give them reference, not only from my writers, but from their writers in history, law, and religion. CLIO is one of the books. THALIA is one of the books. ERATO is another book. EURERPI is another book. POLYHMIA is another book. CALLIOPE is another book. TERPSICHORE is another book. URANIA is another book. And the last one, MELPOMENE. Look those up. And in the Clio book, he write about the Pelgic, or the PELAGIC, the ancient Greek people, being black Greeks from ancient times. And Herodotus states that the Hellenists absorbed themselves voluntarily with the invading white barbarians, but the Pelgics, the Greeks, remained pure black Greeks. So I'll leave y'all with that, Morris. Any questions? I went for 2 hours for y'all. Any questions pertaining to history, pertaining to something serious? Not asking about what somebody sheik did. I don't care about that. That ain't my perspective. If you're not learning at your temple, if somebody making you a paper terrorist saying they're gonna make you this and make you that with some notes and all that, I ain't got nothing to do with that. If you driving without license and you got some ID and you say you went out of town and you did all that, I ain't got nothing to do with that. That ain't even my concern. If you worrying about just some traffic law, that ain't my concern either. So I want to be clear on those things. Please don't ask me that, because that ain't my concern. None of that stuff. Any questions? I'll give it 5 minutes for any questions and I'm out here. Yeah, if you like the teachings, yes, Cash App $KGB. I'm telling y'all, man, y'all will not want to miss these teachings, man, privately, especially Sunday school. Especially how I started teaching all the science with all the books that go with the Morris science. Then I started synchronizing with the Brahmin text and show you how this is universal. So if there's no questions, man, thank y'all for the donations. Like I said, I'm going to keep asking nobles for donations. If you keep coming here, I'm going to keep asking. I'm not afraid to ask for the donations if something I like. I'm not going to keep asking. And that's the only way you're going to be able to join us privately. Just like if you came to my physical temple. I will hope you wouldn't mind giving a donation. I will hope you wouldn't mind supporting the temple and supporting the body if you supporting on here, if you watching. Because if I'm not saying nothing to you and I'm talking gibberish, that's okay to me. I'm a big boy. I'm way stronger than that. But if I'm giving you something and you continually to be here, continuously over and over, come on, man. It should be basic. It should be common. It's like common law. It should be common law to do certain things. Especially when you want to say you learn. Especially if you don't have the science. Don't you want to touch it and have it? Don't you want to be resurrected with truth? and challenge your own people from the lies and operate totally on a clear understanding. So with that being said, man, I love everybody. Since no questions, I give gratitude to everyone. I challenge you to study. I challenge you to do some research. If there's any more questions, man, we good? If we good, let me know, man. I had a couple people that bought this yesterday, you know, gave me a donation. They got it. Of course they do. It's a lot of stuff everywhere, man. I told, man, it's just everywhere. There's no denying it. It's no, like I said, there's no, I don't come from a malice place. I come from love. A person don't have to accept my love. A person don't have to tune in, but a person will respect what I'm doing. And if I know, and everybody know I get paid to this and I have a certain position in life, I come back and try to show my brothers and sisters something that we can do and how we can support something with donations, just like the others do, and use the laws to build their infrastructure the same way I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. We got to get out that banging, trying to get stuff free and doing all that criminal stuff. And let's do some stuff that's real for the children, for us, economically, educational wise. You know what I mean? So I guess it ain't no questions. I've been going for a minute. It's good to study instead of watching TV all day. So any questions, man? Gratitude. Like I said, thank y'all for the donations. Peace out. Would I meet you for dinner? That's my mama. I'm on my way. I'm done. My mama like, would I meet you with her for dinner? Heck, shit, I'm finna go smash right now. But gratitude, man. And I love y'all in peace.